Malik sat in the back of his black Rolls-Royce, staring at a faded photograph of his daughter Zuri. It had been 2 years since the police told him she was gone forever. 2 years since his wife, Amani, wept in his arms, claiming the kidnappers had vanished into thin air. Then, the traffic stopped. Malik looked out the window. A small, thin girl in a tattered dress was weaving through the heat, clutching cold plastic bottles. She approached his car. As she reached up to the glass, Malik froze. On her left wrist was a faint, star-shaped scar. His heart stopped. "Zuri," he whispered. The girl's eyes met his. There was no recognition, only a deep, haunting terror. She didn't call him father. Instead, she trembled and backed away, muttering a name he didn't know. Malik's world fractured. If his daughter was alive, standing right here in the dust of the highway, then who was buried in that small, white casket 2 years ago? And why did Amani swear she watched the girl take her last breath? A billionaire had everything, but he didn't know he was sleeping next to a monster. Now, the hunt for the truth begins. Someone is watching from the shadows, and they aren't ready for Zuri to be found. What really happened that night? And how deep does his wife's betrayal go? Malik watched through the tinted glass as the girl vanished into the sea of honking cars. His lungs felt tight, like they were filled with the very dust rising from the pavement. He wanted to scream her name again, to tear the door open and grab her, but his driver, Samuel, had already begun to move as the light turned green. "Sir, is everything all right?" Samuel asked, glancing at the rearview mirror. Malik didn't answer. His fingers were trembling as he reached for his phone. He didn't call the police. He didn't call his private security. Instead, he dialed his home. Amani answered on the second ring. Her voice was smooth like silk, yet it made the hair on Malik's neck stand up. "Malik, darlings, are you coming home for the memorial dinner? The caterers just arrived." Malik cleared his throat, trying to keep his voice steady. "Amani, tell me again about that night at the park. The night Zuri vanished." There was a pause, just a fraction of a second too long. "Why are you asking this now, Malik?" "It's been 2 years. It hurts too much to talk about." Her voice dropped into a practiced, mournful whisper. "The kidnappers took her from the swings. By the time I turned around, she was gone. You know this." Malik looked at the star-shaped scar on his own palm, a matching one he had given himself when Zuri was born. "You told me you saw them drive away in a black van. You told the police you heard her scream." "I did," Amani snapped, her tone suddenly sharpening. "Are you questioning me? After everything I've suffered?" Malik hung up without saying goodbye. He didn't go home. Instead, he directed Samuel to drive to the family's private estate, to the heavy iron gates of their mansion. He walked straight to the basement, to the climate-controlled room where they kept the family archives. He needed to see the police report one more time. But as he pulled the heavy steel drawer labeled *2024, he realized something was wrong. The folder was there, but the autopsy photos of the body they found in the river, the body they were told was Zuri, were missing. Malik's heart hammered against his ribs. He began tossing papers aside, searching for the forensic DNA results. He found the envelope, but when he pulled out the document, he froze. The paper wasn't a lab report. It was a handwritten receipt for a massive cash withdrawal from Amani's personal account, dated 3 days before Zuri went missing. And at the bottom of the receipt, there was a scribble in a frantic hand: "Transfer complete. The girl is moved. No turning back." Malik stared at the handwriting. It wasn't the kidnappers. It was Amani's. Just then, the heavy basement door creaked open behind him. Malik didn't turn around. He heard the soft click of expensive heels on the concrete floor. "You weren't supposed to be down here, Malik." Amani's voice echoed in the cold room. She wasn't crying anymore. In fact, she sounded almost bored. Malik gripped the receipt so hard it wrinkled. He realized then that the girl in the street wasn't just a coincidence. She was a ghost coming back to haunt a lie that was far bigger than a kidnapping. But if Imani had moved the girl, who was the child they buried in the white casket? And who was Imani talking to on her burner phone when she thought Malik was asleep? Malik didn't turn to face the woman he had called his wife for 5 years. He shoved the crumpled receipt into his pocket just as the basement light flickered. Imani stood by the door, her silk dress shimmering in the dim light. She looked perfect. She looked like the grieving mother the world expected her to be. But her eyes were as cold as the concrete floor. "I asked you a question, Malik," she said, her voice dropping the morning act entirely. "Why are you digging through old trash?" "I saw her, Imani," Malik whispered, his voice cracking. "I saw a girl today. In the traffic. She had the scar." Imani didn't flinch. She didn't gasp. She simply walked toward a shelf of expensive vintage wine and ran a manicured fingernail along a bottle. Grief plays tricks on the mind. You see a ghost in every street child because you can't let go. She walked past him, her expensive perfume filling the damp air, and headed toward the stairs. "Come up. The guests are arriving. Don't embarrass me." Malik waited until he heard the click of the lock above. He didn't follow her to the ballroom. Instead, he slipped out through the service entrance and called Samuel. "Take me back to that intersection," Malik commanded, "now." As the Rolls-Royce glided through the iron gates, Malik looked at his surroundings. His mansion was a fortress of marble and gold. The gardens were manicured by a team of 10. His dogs ate better than most people in the city. But 20 minutes later, the car stopped at the edge of the slums near the highway. The contrast was like a physical blow to the chest. Here, the air smelled of burning plastic and exhaust. Children with hollow cheeks and dusty hair huddled under a rusted overpass. Malik stepped out of his 6-figure car, his polished leather shoes sinking into the gray mud. He looked around. The girl was there. Zuri, if it was really her, was sitting on a plastic crate. She was sharing a single, moldy piece of bread with a stray dog. Her hands were stained with oil from the cars she had touched. Her dress was so thin the wind blew right through it. Malik walked toward her, his heart breaking with every step. He was wearing a suit that cost more than this entire block. He felt like an intruder in a world of pain he had ignored for years. "Zuri," he called out softly. The girl jumped. She didn't look at his face. She looked at his shoes, then at his expensive watch. Fear flashed in her eyes. She grabbed her crate of water bottles and scrambled backward. "I don't have any change, mister. Please don't hit me," she cried out. Malik stopped. "Hit you? Why would I hit you? I'm here to help." The girl pointed to a black SUV parked under the shadows of the overpass. A man with a scarred face was leaning against the door, watching them. "The boss said if I talk to men in suits, I get the belts. He said my real father sent him to make sure I work." Malik felt the blood drain from his face. "The boss, who is he?" The girl lined in, her voice a terrified whisper. "He's the man who brings the money to the lady in the big house. He told me if I ever go back there, the lady will make sure I never wake up again." Malik looked at the black SUV. The man behind the wheel started the engine. He didn't look like a common kidnapper. He was wearing a security uniform from Malik's own company. Just then, Malik's phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text from an unknown number. It was a photo taken just seconds ago, a photo of Malik standing next to the girl in the mud. The message read, "Go home, Malik. Some things are better left buried. If you touch her, she dies for real this time." Malik looked up, but the black SUV was already peeling away, tires screeching. The girl was gone too, vanished into the maze of shacks. He stood alone in the mud, realizing the trap was much bigger than he thought. His wife wasn't just lying. She was running a business, and his own employees were the guards of his daughter's prison. But there was one thing the message didn't explain. If Zuri was being kept as a worker, why did the man in the SUV just drop a small, gold locket into the dirt before driving off? Malik picked it up and snapped it open. Inside was a picture of Amani, but she wasn't alone. She was standing next to the man with the scarred face, and they were both holding a newborn baby that wasn't Suri. Malik stood frozen in the mud, clutching the gold locket. The photograph inside felt like a physical burn against his skin. It was Amani, younger and smiling, but she wasn't with Malik. She was leaning against the chest of the man with the scarred face, the same man who had just sped away in the black SUV. And between them, wrapped in a blue blanket, was a baby that was definitely not Suri. The rain began to fall, turning the dust of the slums into a thick, choking sludge. Malik didn't care about his expensive suit. He ran. He ignored the burning in his lungs as he chased the direction of the SUV, weaving through the narrow, rusted shacks of the slum. He turned a corner and skidded to a stop. There, tucked behind a wall of stacked shipping containers, sat the black SUV. The engine was still idling, a low hum that vibrated in the damp air. The driver's side door was wide open. Malik crept forward, his heart hammering against his ribs. He expected a trap. He expected the man with the scarred face to jump out and fulfill the threat in the text message. But as he reached the door, he saw something that made his blood turn to ice. The driver's seat was empty, but on the floor mat sat a single, worn-out teddy bear. It was a small, brown bear with one button eye missing, the exact same toy Suri had been holding the day she disappeared from the park. Malik. A voice called out from the shadows of the containers. It wasn't the man with the scar. It was a woman's voice, raspy and weak. Malik spun around. Emerged from the darkness was an old woman, her face a map of deep wrinkles, wearing a faded domestic worker's uniform. Malik recognized her instantly. It was Mama C, the nanny who had been fired the day after Suri went missing. She was trembling, her eyes darting toward the black SUV. "You shouldn't have come, Malik. They've been waiting for you to see that girl. It was the only way to get you out of the house." Malik grabbed her by the shoulders. "Where is my daughter C? Is that girl in the traffic really Suri?" Mama C grabbed Malik's hand and pulled him behind a rusted crate just as another car pulled up near the SUV. "That girl is a lure, Malik. A distraction. Imani knew you'd never stop looking for the star-shaped scar, so she found a child who looked just like Suri and gave her one." Malik felt the world tilt. What? Then where is the real Suri? Mama C lined in, her breath smelling of herbal tea and fear. "Look at the locket again, Malik. Look at the date engraved on the back." Malik snapped the locket open. His eyes widened. The date was 10 years ago, 3 years before he even met Amani. She didn't just lie about the kidnapping. Mama C whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. She lied about who she is. "And right now, at your mansion, the memorial dinner isn't for Suri. It's for you. She's signing the papers to declare you mentally unfit tonight." Suddenly, the headlights of the new car swung toward their hiding spot. A heavy footsteps echoed on the metal floor of the container. "Malik," a man shouted. It was Samuel, his driver. But Samuel wasn't holding a car key. He was holding a silenced pistol, and his eyes were fixed on the locket in Malik's hand. "The lady wants her jewelry back," Samuel said coldly. "And she wants to know why you're talking to a woman who died in a house fire 3 months ago." Malik looked at Mama C, then back at Samuel. If Mama C was dead, then who was standing right in front of him? And why was his most trusted employee pointing a gun at his chest in the middle of a graveyard of rusted steel? Malik backed away, his leather shoes slipping on the wet metal. His eyes darted between the silenced pistol in Samuel's hand and the shivering woman beside him. The woman who shouldn't exist. The woman who was officially dead. "Samuel, put the gun down," Malik commanded, his voice trembling with a mixture of rage and terror. "You've worked for me for 10 years. I paid for your mother's surgery. I put your kids through school." Samuel didn't move. His face was like stone. "And Amani pays for my silence, Malik. She pays much better than gratitude. Malik felt a surge of adrenaline. He didn't think. He didn't calculate. He grabbed a heavy, rusted iron pipe leaning against the crate and swung it with all his might. The pipe clanged against the side of the shipping container, creating a deafening ring that echoed through the rain. Samuel flinched, and in that split second of distraction, Mama C or whoever she was shoved Malik toward the darkness behind the containers. "Run, Malik! To the river!" she screamed. Malik bolted. He ignored the mud splashing onto his face. He ignored the sharp pain in his chest. Behind him, he heard the soft asterisk thud-thud of the silenced pistol. A bullet hissed past his ear, sparking off a rusted oil drum. He scrambled up a steep embankment, his hands clawing at the wet earth. He reached the top and looked down. Below him was the dark, churning water of the city's industrial canal. He turned back for a second. Samuel was standing at the base of the hill, adjusting his grip on the weapon. But Mama C was gone. It was as if the shadows had swallowed her whole. "There is no Yuri," Malik Samuel shouted over the rain. "The girl in the traffic, the girl in the park, it was all a script. Amani didn't just take your daughter. She erased her. There's nothing left to find but a body." Malik felt his mind fracturing. If Yuri was erased, whose teddy bear was in the SUV? If Mama C was dead, whose hand had just pushed him to safety? He reached into his pocket and felt the locket. His fingers brushed against something else, a small, cold piece of metal he hadn't noticed before. He pulled it out. It was a key, a small, brass key with a tag that had only one word written on it in faded blue ink: attic. Malik's breath hitched. His mansion didn't have an attic. He had designed the house himself, 3 floors of modern, flat-roofed glass and steel. There was no attic in his home. Unless the big house the girl in the traffic mentioned wasn't his mansion at all. Samuel began to climb the embankment. "Give me the locket, Malik, and maybe I'll tell you which grave we actually used." Malik looked at the black water, then at the brass key in his hand. He realized he was being hunted by his own life. He took a deep breath and jumped. As the cold water swallowed him, Malik saw a flash of light from the road above. A second car had arrived, a silver Mercedes. The door opened, and a woman stepped out, shielded by a large black umbrella. It wasn't Amani. It was the woman from the locket photograph, the woman who was supposed to be holding the baby 10 years ago. She looked down at the river, her expression unreadable, and whispered something into a walkie-talkie. "He's in the water. Proceed to phase 2. Bring the girl." Malik struggled to stay afloat, the current pulling him into the darkness. He realized then that the girl in the traffic wasn't the only Yuri Amani had prepared, and the person he was running from wasn't the one he should be afraid of. The real question wasn't where Yuri was. The real question was, who was the baby in the blue blanket, and why was he currently sleeping in a nursery at the back of Malik's own house? Malik surfaced 3 blocks down, gasping for air as he hauled himself onto a rotting wooden pier. His body was shaking, not just from the cold, but from the sheer weight of the betrayal. He crawled toward the street, his expensive clothes, now nothing more than soaked rags, clinging to him like a second skin. He needed to get back to the mansion. He needed to see that baby in the blue blanket. But as he reached the main road, the night took another sharp turn. Blue and red lights flashed against the wet pavement. 2 police cruisers were parked outside a small, crowded diner where people had gathered to escape the rain. Malik tried to wave them down, but as he approached, the officers didn't reach for their radios. They reached for their holsters. "Malik Jackson. Hands where we can see them," the officer shouted. Malik stopped, blinking through the rain. "I'm the victim here. My driver tried to kill me, my wife." "Save it for the station," the officer interrupted. He stepped aside, and a familiar figure stepped out from behind the cruiser. It was Amani. She was draped in a black cashmere coat, her face pale and streaked with tears. Beside her was a man Malik hadn't seen in years, his own brother Marcus, who had been estranged since the day Zuri disappeared. Malik, please, Amani wailed, her voice projecting to the growing crowd of onlookers who had stepped out of the diner. Just come with the doctors. You're not well. You haven't been the same since we lost her. Marcus stepped forward, placing a heavy hand on the officer's shoulder. My brother has been hallucinating for weeks, officer. He thinks he sees our Zuri in every street corner. Look at him. He's jumped into a sewer chasing a ghost. The crowd began to whisper. Malik looked down at himself, covered in mud, smelling of river water, clutching a rusted brass key. He looked exactly like a man who had lost his mind. I'm not crazy, Malik roared. Pointing at Amani, she lied. Zuri is alive, I saw her. Amani turned to the crowd, her voice trembling with perfect, theatrical grief. He attacked me in the basement tonight. He said I was keeping Zuri in the attic. We don't even have an attic. He's dangerous. The onlookers began to pull out their phones, filming the billionaire's public breakdown. Malik saw the judgment in their eyes. They didn't see a father looking for his daughter. They saw a wealthy man crumbling under the weight of his own guilt. But then, Marcus leaned in close to Malik's ear, his voice a low, venomous hiss that only Malik could hear. You should have stayed in the water, brother. Amani told me about the key. But you're looking at the wrong house. Did you forget about our father's old cabin in the woods? The one with the hidden crawl space. Malik's heart stopped. Marcus was in on it. His own blood was helping Amani erase him. Why? Marcus, Malik whispered. Because. Marcus smiled thinly. Zuri was never yours to begin with. Ask the lady in the silver Mercedes. She's waiting for you at the cabin. The police moved in to cuff him, but a sudden commotion broke out at the edge of the crowd. A small girl in a tattered dress pushed through the legs of the onlookers. It was the girl from the traffic. She wasn't selling water now. She was holding a crumpled piece of paper, and she was pointing straight at Amani. That's her, the girl screamed. That's the lady who took the other girl. The one who looks like me. The officers hesitated. Amani's face went white. She didn't look at the girl. She looked at the silver Mercedes that had just pulled up at the corner of the street. The girl ran toward Malik, but before she could reach him, a man in a medical uniform grabbed her. Sorry, folks. This one escaped from the youth ward earlier. She's with the Jackson family's charity program. Malik watched as they threw the girl into the back of a van. He realized then that the trap wasn't just to make him look crazy. It was to swap the children right in front of everyone. As they shoved Malik into the police car, he saw Marcus hand a small, blue blanket to Amani. She clutched it to her chest, sobbing for the cameras. But as the car pulled away, Malik looked at the brass key still hidden in his palm. He realized Marcus had made one mistake. He had mentioned the cabin. The question was if the girl in the van wasn't Zuri, and the girl in the traffic was a decoy, who was currently being moved to the cabin in the silver Mercedes. And why did the police officer driving the car just turn off his body camera and take a different route away from the station? The police cruiser moved silently through the rain, but Malik knew these streets. They weren't heading to the central precinct. They were heading toward the outskirts, toward the dense, dark tree line where his father's old cabin sat. Malik looked at the back of the officer's head. The man didn't speak. He didn't even look at the mirror. He just drove, cold and robotic. Malik reached into his soaked pocket and squeezed the brass key. He felt a burning wave of hatred for Marcus. His own brother had suggested Zuri was never his. The words played over and over in his head. Zuri was never yours. Malik realized then, or he thought he did, the reason for the kidnapping. He believed Zuri wasn't really his biological daughter. He suspected that his first wife had cheated on him, and Amani had discovered the truth to him. It all made sense now. Amani wasn't just a villain in his twisted, panicked mind. He felt she was cleaning up a mess he had unknowingly brought into the family. She's replacing her. Malik whispered to the empty backseat. She's replacing Zuri with that baby in the blue blanket because that baby is a real Jackson. That's why Marcus is helping her. He felt a bitter sting of resentment. He decided right then that if Zuri wasn't his blood, he didn't care. She was still his daughter. But he was convinced that the woman in the silver Mercedes, the one from the locket, was the biological mother of the new baby, and Amani was buying that child to secure the Jackson legacy. Suddenly, the cruiser slowed down. They weren't at the cabin yet. They were stopped at a private airfield at the edge of the woods. The officer finally spoke, "Get out." Malik stepped out into the mud. Waiting on the tarmac was the silver Mercedes. The door opened, and the woman from the locket stepped out. She looked exactly like Amani, but older, harder. She walked up to Malik and reached for his pocket. She snatched the brass key before he could react. "You think you're so smart, Malik," she said, her voice sounding like gravel. "You think this is about money. You think this is about a bloodline." She pointed to the cabin visible in the distance. A single light was flickering in the top window. "Go to the cabin," she commanded. "Use the crawl space Marcus told you about. But don't look for Zuri. Zuri is already on a plane to London. Look for the file labeled Project Genesis." "Who are you?" Malik spat, his eyes red with fury. "Are you the mother of that baby in the house?" The woman laughed a cold, hollow sound. She leaned in close, her eyes boring into his. "I'm not the mother, Malik. I'm the doctor who delivered you. And if you open that crawl space, you'll realize that Zuri isn't the only person in this family who doesn't officially exist." She climbed back into the Mercedes and sped off, leaving Malik alone with the silent officer. Malik began to run toward the cabin. He was certain he would find proof of a fake inheritance. He was certain he would find out Amani was just a gold digger. He reached the porch and ripped open the floorboards in the kitchen, finding the hidden crawlspace Marcus had mentioned. He reached inside and pulled out a heavy, leather-bound ledger. He flipped to the last page. But it wasn't a birth certificate for a baby. It was a life insurance policy. The policy was for Malik Jackson. It had been signed 10 years ago, and the sole beneficiary wasn't Amani. It wasn't Zuri. It was a name he had never heard before, Silas Jackson. Just as he read the name, a shadow fell over the crawlspace. Malik looked up. Standing in the doorway was the girl from the traffic. But she wasn't dirty anymore. She was wearing a clean white dress, and she was holding a silenced pistol. "Put the book down, Dad," she said, her voice perfectly calm and adult. "You weren't supposed to find out about Silas until the funeral." The girl tilted her head, a chilling smile spreading across her face. "Now, do you want to know who is actually in that blue blanket back at the house?" Malik stared at the girl in the white dress. Her voice didn't sound like a child's. It was cold. It was calculating. He looked at the gun in her small hand, then back at the name in the ledger, Silas Jackson. "You aren't Zuri," Malik hissed, his voice trembling with a raw, burning anger. "You're just another part of Amani's sick game. Another actress." The girl didn't blink. She didn't deny it. "I'm whoever the contract says I am, Dad. But you're making a mistake. You're looking for a daughter who was never your blood. And you're ignoring the son who is currently sleeping in your house." Malik's mind snapped. The son, the baby in the blue blanket. His brother Marcus's words echoed back to him, how Zuri was never his. He was now convinced that Amani had replaced his daughter with a secret love child she had with the scarred man from the locket. "I'm done being played," Malik roared. He didn't wait for her to pull the trigger. He lunged forward, kicking the ledger into the girl's shins and diving through the open cabin window. He hit the wet grass hard, rolling into the darkness of the woods. Behind him, he heard a soft asterisk PFT, the sound of a silenced shot hitting the wooden frame. He ran through the trees, fueled by a pure, blinding hatred. He didn't head for the police cruiser. He headed for the main road. He flagged down a passing truck, throwing a handful of $100 bills at the driver. The Jackson estate now. Drive like your life depends on it. When the truck reached the mansion, Malik didn't use the front gate. He climbed the perimeter wall, his hands bleeding from the jagged stones. He crossed the lawn, avoiding the security cameras he had installed himself. He burst through the glass doors of the nursery. Imani was there. She was sitting in a rocking chair, cradling the baby in the blue blanket. She looked up, her eyes widening in a mixture of shock and triumph. "Malik, you're alive, thank God." "Shut up," Malik screamed. He snatched the baby from her arms before she could react. "Malik, stop. You don't understand," Imani cried out, reaching for the child. "I understand everything now," Malik spat, backing toward the balcony. "This isn't my daughter. This isn't even a Jackson. This is the brat you had with that man in the SUV. You killed Zuri to make room for this." He looked down at the infant's face. The baby began to cry. Malik felt a cold, dark satisfaction. He was going to expose her. He was going to throw this child out of his house and make Imani watch as everything she built crumbled. "Get out," Malik pointed toward the door. "Get out before I call the real authorities. I'm disinheriting everyone, Marcus, you this baby. I'm burning it all down." Imani stood up slowly. She wasn't crying anymore. She smoothed her dress and looked at him with a strange, pitying expression. "You really think that's his baby?" "Malik," she asked quietly. "Look at the baby's left foot. Look at the birthmark." Malik hesitated. He pulled back the blue blanket. On the infant's heel was a small, dark mark, the exact same birthmark Malik's father had. The mark of the Jackson firstborn. "Zuri wasn't the first child I took, Malik," Imani whispered. "She was the distraction. I needed you to look for a girl so you wouldn't realize I was hiding the boy you actually fathered 10 years ago. The boy you just signed a death warrant for by bringing him back here." Malik's heart turned to lead. He looked at the baby. He looked at Imani. He realized his rage had blinded him to the biggest lie of all. But then, the nursery door slammed shut. The lock clicked. From the baby's monitor, a man's voice crackled through, the voice of Silas Jackson. "Thank you for bringing the heir home, Malik. Now, let's talk about that life insurance policy you just found." Malik looked at the balcony. The silver Mercedes was parked below, and standing next to it was the missing girl from the traffic, holding a remote detonator. The cold metal of the nursery lock clicking shut sounded like a death sentence. Malik stood on the balcony, clutching the crying baby to his chest. His hands, once used to signing billion-dollar deals, were now shaking so hard he almost dropped the only son he never knew he had. Down below, the girl from the traffic looked up. She wasn't a victim anymore. She didn't look like Zuri anymore. She pressed a button on the small black remote in her hand. A deafening explosion rocked the west wing of the mansion. The glass doors behind Malik shattered into a million jagged diamonds. The lights cut out, plunging the nursery into a terrifying darkness, lit only by the orange glow of the fire spreading downstairs. "Malik, give me the child," Imani screamed, her voice barely audible over the roar of the flames. She wasn't moving toward him to help. She was backing toward a hidden wall panel, her eyes fixed on the baby as if he were nothing more than a gold bar. "Who is Silas?" Malik roared, his voice cracking. "Where is my daughter Imani? Tell me the truth before we all burn." The baby monitor crackled again. The voice was clearer now, chillingly calm. "I am the brother you were told died at birth, Malik. The one your father traded for your inheritance. I've lived in the shadows of this family for 30 years, and today, I'm taking back everything that has my name on it." Malik looked at the infant's heel. The birthmark. It was the mark of the firstborn. If Silas was the elder brother, then Malik was the one who didn't belong. He looked at Imani. She wasn't just a lying wife. She was Silas's pawn. "The insurance policy," Malik whispered, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. "It wasn't for me. It was for the death of the fake heir." Suddenly, The balcony railing groaned. The explosion had weakened the structure. Malik looked down. The silver Mercedes was gone. In its place stood Samuel, his former driver, aiming a flare gun at the nursery. The girl in the traffic wasn't just a decoy Malik. Samuel shouted from below. She was the timer. And your time just ran out. Malik looked back at the room. Imani had disappeared through the wall panel, leaving him trapped in a burning room with a child he had just disowned and a brother he had never met. He was a billionaire with no money, a father with no daughter, and a man with no identity. He slumped against the crumbling stone, the heat singing his hair. He looked at the brass key still gripped in his bloody palm. It wasn't just for an attic. He noticed a small, engraved serial number on the side of the key, the same number tattooed on the wrist of the girl in the white dress. Why would a key to a house match a girl's skin? And if Sila's was his brother, why was the voice on the monitor coming from the baby's own crib? Malik reached into the silk blankets, feeling around the infant's mattress. His fingers hit something hard and cold. It wasn't a toy. It was a secondary detonator, wired directly to the baby's heartbeat sensor. If Malik let go of the child, the whole mansion would vanish. If he stayed, they both burned. But as the floor began to give way, a shadow appeared in the smoke. A small, charred hand reached through the broken glass. "Dad, is that you?" It was Zuri's voice. The real Zuri. But she wasn't alone. She was being dragged back into the flames by someone Malik thought was an ally. The charred hand through the smoke didn't belong to a ghost. Malik lunged forward, shielding the infant with his body as he grabbed the small, trembling wrist he pulled. A girl stumbled through the shattered glass, coughing and covered in soot. It was Zuri. The real Zuri. The star-shaped scar on her wrist was jagged and real, not a surgical fake like the girl in the traffic. But she wasn't alone. Holding her other hand was Samuel. Malik tightened his grip on the iron pipe, his eyes wide. "Samuel, you tried to kill me." Samuel didn't raise his weapon. He looked at the spreading fire and then at the baby in Malik's arms. "I had to make them believe I was on their side, Malik. If I didn't, Zuri would have been buried in that cabin weeks ago." Samuel reached into his vest and pulled out a small, encrypted tablet. He slid it across the floor toward Malik. "Look at the footage from the day of the kidnapping. Look at who was driving the black van." Malik glanced at the screen. The driver wasn't a stranger. It was Marcus. But Marcus wasn't taking Zuri away to hurt her. He was handing her a bottle of water and a teddy bear. "Marcus didn't betray you," Samuel whispered, his voice urgent. He found out Sila's was alive years ago. He knew Imani was working for him. He staged the kidnapping to get Zuri out of the house before Sila's could use her as a blood donor. Malik froze. "A blood donor? What are you talking about?" "Sila's isn't just your brother," Samuel revealed. "He's dying. He has a rare bone marrow disorder that only a direct Jackson descendant can fix. Imani wasn't looking for an heir. She was looking for a harvest." The Project Genesis file Malik had seen in the cabin flashed in his mind. It wasn't about inheritance. It was a medical chart. The truth hit Malik like a physical weight. The baby in his arms wasn't Silas's son, and he wasn't Malik's secret child either. Malik looked closer at the infant's face. The birthmark on the heel wasn't a birthmark at all. He rubbed it with his thumb. The dark pigment smudged. It was medical ink. "This baby, he's not a Jackson," Malik gasped. "No," Samuel said. "He's a decoy. Imani stole him from a local clinic to keep you occupied while Silas's men moved the real Project Genesis to the basement." Malik looked at the floorboards beneath his feet. The nursery wasn't just a room. It was built directly over a private surgical suite. The voice on the monitor hadn't been coming from Sila's in a distant location. The voice was coming from directly beneath the floor. "Sila's is here," Malik realized, his blood turning to ice. "He's right under us. Just then, the secondary detonator in the baby's mattress began to beep faster. The heartbeat sensor wasn't tracking the baby's heart. It was tracking Malik's. Every secret has a price, Malik. Silas's voice boomed through the speakers, no longer filtered by the monitor. The floor in the center of the nursery began to hiss. A hidden elevator platform started to rise, draped in white medical plastic. On the table lay a man who looked exactly like Malik, but withered and pale. But Silas wasn't the only one on the platform. Tied to a chair next to the surgical bed was the woman in the silver Mercedes. She wasn't Silas's accomplice. She was screaming through a gag, her eyes fixed on the gold locket Malik still held. "If she's not with Silas," Malik whispered. "Then who was the woman I talked to at the airfield?" Samuel's face went pale. He looked at the woman on the platform, then at the doors. "If that's the real doctor, then who is currently standing behind you with the remote?" Malik turned around. The girl in the white dress was standing in the doorway. She peeled off a thin silicone mask, revealing a face that looked exactly like a younger version of Imani. "Hello, Uncle Malik," the woman said, her voice dropping the childlike act. "Did you really think my mother was the one in charge?" Malik stared at the woman in the doorway. She wasn't a child. She was Imani's younger sister, Naomi, the person he had just seen at the airfield. The realization felt like a physical blow. Every move he had made, every angry outburst, had been exactly what they wanted. He had disowned his own daughter and nearly hurt an innocent infant because he let his rage lead the way. "I was so blind," Malik whispered. He looked at Zuri, whose face was streaked with soot and tears. She was still trembling, looking at him with eyes that had seen too much. Malik fell to his knees. He didn't care about the rising elevator or the man beneath the floor. He dropped the iron pipe and reached out, not to grab her, but to shield her. "Zuri, I am so sorry," he choked out. "I should have known. I should have felt it was you." Zuri didn't run. She stepped forward and pressed her small, star-scarred wrist against his cheek. "I never stopped selling the water, Dad. I knew you'd come for that intersection eventually." Malik pulled her into a tight embrace, the heat of the fire singeing his back. He felt a sudden, sharp clarity. He couldn't change the last 2 years, but he could change the next 2 minutes. He stood up, clutching Zuri with one arm and the decoy baby with the other. He turned to Samuel. "Get them out. There's a ventilation shaft behind the changing table. It leads to the garden." "What about you?" Samuel asked, grabbing Zuri's hand. Malik looked at Naomi, who was still holding the remote, a mocking smile on her lips. Then he looked at the withered man on the medical table, his brother Silas. "I have to stop the sensor," Malik said. He realized the beeping was tied to his own frantic pulse. As long as he was terrified, the timer would count down. He closed his eyes and forced his breath to slow. "You're trying to stay calm," Naomi laughed, stepping into the room. "The house is burning, Malik. Your pulse will never drop low enough to stop the blast." Malik didn't answer her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the gold locket. He didn't look at the photo of Imani. He looked at the serial number on the brass key. He realized the numbers weren't just a code, they were a frequency. He smashed the locket against the metal railing of the balcony, revealing a small, hidden microchip inside the casing. It wasn't a gift from Silas, Malik muttered to himself. It was a jammer. He pressed the chip against the beeping mattress. The sound stuttered. The countdown paused at 4 seconds. Naomi's smile vanished. She frantically began pressing buttons on her remote, but nothing happened. Malik had bought them a window of time. "Run!" Now Malik yelled to Samuel. As Samuel disappeared into the shaft with the children, Malik turned back to the medical platform. He saw Silas's hand twitch. The dying man's eyes opened, and he reached out, clutching Malik's sleeve with surprising strength. "The girl in the traffic," Silas wheezed, his voice a ghost of Malik's own. "She wasn't just a decoy, Malik. Look at the back of her neck. Malik leaned over, looking at the woman Naomi was keeping gagged. He moved the collar of her shirt. There, tattooed in the same medical ink, was a different name, Imani Jackson. Malik gasped. If the woman on the table was the real Imani, then who had he been living with for the last 5 years? Just then, the ceiling above them groaned. A massive crystal chandelier, weakened by the fire, began to break free from its mount. It was hanging directly over Malik and the woman on the table. Malik had a choice: save the woman who might be his real wife, or dive for the exit before the roof collapsed. But before he could move, a third shadow appeared in the doorway. It was the Imani he knew, but she wasn't wearing silk. She was wearing a tactical vest, and she wasn't looking at Malik. She was looking at Naomi with pure, murderous intent. You weren't supposed to bring him here, Naomi, the fake Imani said, raising a gun. The plan was for him to die in the river. Malik didn't wait for the fake Imani to pull the trigger. He lunged across the medical table, his body a shield over the woman, whose name was tattooed on her skin. The crystal chandelier groaned one last time and plummeted. The sound was like a thunderclap. Shards of glass exploded everywhere, cutting through the thick smoke. Malik felt a sharp pain in his shoulder, but he didn't stop. He used the chaos to grab the real Imani, ripping the tape from her mouth and pulling her toward the balcony edge. "Who are you?" Naomi screamed, firing her gun wildly into the dust. "Who is she?" The woman in the tactical vest, the fake Imani Malik had married, stepped over the shattered glass. Her face was twisted into a mask of pure hate. "I'm the one who did the work, Naomi. I'm the one who spent 5 years in this house while you were playing doctor at the airfield." She raised her weapon, aiming it at Naomi's head. "The plan has changed. Silas is dead weight. You're dead weight. I'm taking the girl and the money." "You don't have the girl," Malik roared. He stood up, blood dripping from his arm, and pointed toward the garden. "She's gone. Samuel has her. And the police are 3 minutes away." The fake Imani laughed a cold, metallic sound. She reached into her vest and pulled out a small, glowing tracking device. "Samuel. You mean the man who still has my microbomb in his pocket?" One click, Malik. One click and your daughter becomes a memory again. Malik's heart hammered. He looked at the real Imani, the woman who had been gagged on the table. Her eyes were wide, pleading. She grabbed Malik's hand and pointed toward the brass key he was still clutching. The panel. Are she wazed? Her voice thin from years of silence. "The serial number. It's a code for the override." Malik looked at the key. He didn't look for a lock. He looked for a keypad. He saw it hidden behind the frame of the baby's crib. He scrambled toward it, his fingers slipping on the blood and soot. "Stop him," the fake Imani yelled, turning her gun on Malik. But Naomi wasn't listening. She saw her chance. She lunged for the fake Imani, tackling her into the spreading flames. The two women rolled across the burning carpet, fighting for the gun and the remote. Malik punched the numbers into the keypad. 7429, the same numbers on the key. The beeping on the mattress stopped. But something else happened. A secret compartment in the wall slid open. It wasn't filled with money or files. Inside was a series of glass jars, preserved in liquid. Each one had a label with a date, and each one contained a lock of hair and a small vial of blood. Malik looked at the dates. They went back 20 years. He saw his own name. He saw Zuri's name. And he saw a name that made his breath catch, Malik II. "He wasn't your brother, Malik," the real Imani whispered, leaning against him for support. "Silas wasn't your brother. He was your first attempt. You were the second." Malik looked at the withered man on the table. He looked at his own hands. The world felt like it was dissolving. Just then, Samuel's voice crackled through the intercom system of the house. "Malik, I found the basement exit, but the gate is locked. I need the master code." Malik looked at the two women fighting in the fire. He looked at the real Imani. Then he looked at the vials in the wall. He realized that if he didn't act now, the truth about his entire existence would burn with the house. He grabbed the vials, stuffing them into his pockets. He scooped the real Imani up in his arms and ran for the balcony. "Malik, wait," the fake Imani screamed, breaking free from her sister. She held up the detonator. "If you jump, I press it." Malik didn't stop. He looked at the woman he had just rescued. "Hold on," he whispered. As they leaped from the third-story balcony into the dark bushes below, Malik saw something in the corner of his eye. A third silver Mercedes was pulling into the driveway. The door opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, wearing a perfectly tailored suit, and he looked exactly like Malik. But he wasn't withered. He wasn't pale. The man looked at the burning mansion and adjusted his tie. He didn't look worried. He looked disappointed. He picked up a radio. "Malik 3 has escaped with the samples. Initialize the recall. And find the girl. She's the only natural one left." Malik hit the ground hard. The wind knocked out of him. He looked up at the man by the car. His mind screamed. If he was Malik 2, and Sila's was Malik 1, then who was the man standing by the Mercedes? And why was Zuri suddenly standing next to him, holding his hand as if she had known him her whole life? Malik lay in the wet grass, his body aching, his eyes fixed on the man standing by the silver Mercedes. The resemblance was terrifying. It wasn't just a likeness, it was a mirror. The man adjusted his cufflinks with the same precise movement Malik used before every board meeting. "Who are you?" Malik gasped, struggling to stand while holding the real Imani. The man didn't answer. He didn't even look at Malik. He simply watched the fire consume the third floor. Above them, a final, muffled explosion sent a plume of black smoke into the night sky. The fire had consumed the top floor, burying the screams and the greed of the fake Imani and Naomi under a mountain of ash. The secrets of the nursery were now nothing but charcoal. Zuri stood beside the stranger, her small hand tucked into his. She wasn't crying. She looked at Malik with a strange, distant pity. "You did well, Malik 2, the man finally said. His voice was deeper, calmer, like a cello. "You survived longer than the others, but you were always too emotional. That was your flaw." "Dad," Zuri whispered, but she wasn't looking at Malik. She was looking at the man in the suit. Malik felt his heart shatter. The girl he had chased through the traffic, the daughter he had bled for, she wasn't his. She was his asterisk. The original. The natural one. The man stepped into the car, pulling Zuri in beside him. "Keep the vials, Malik. They are useless now. The project is moving to the coast. You have the house, the money, and the woman's. Consider it a retirement gift for a successful experiment." The Mercedes pulled away, its taillights disappearing into the rain. Malik stood alone in the ruins of his life. He looked at the woman in his arms, the real Imani. She was breathing, her eyes slowly clearing as she looked at the burning mansion. She reached out and touched his face. Her touch was warm, real. "It's over," she whispered. "He's gone." But was it over? Malik reached into his pocket and felt the cold glass of the vials. He looked at the one labeled asterisk Malik Roman 2 asterisk. If he was just an experiment, a clone meant to hold a billionaire's place while the real man played God, then why did his chest hurt this much? Why did he still feel the ghost of Zuri's hand in his? He turned his back on the fire. He walked toward the garden gate where Samuel was waiting with the decoy baby. The child was sleeping, unaware of the war that had just ended. Malik took the baby from Samuel. He looked at the real Imani. They were a family of ghosts, survivors of a truth too dark for the world to know. "We live tonight," Malik said, his voice hard as steel. "We live the monies. We live the name. We become no ones." As they walked into the darkness, Malik looked back at the smoldering remains of his empire. He saw a small, glinting object in the dirt. He picked it up. It was Yuri's teddy bear. But when he squeezed it, he didn't hear a toy's squeak. He heard a faint, rhythmic ticking coming from inside. He realized then that the man in the Mercedes hadn't just left him a gift. He had left him a tether. And somewhere in the city, at another busy intersection, another girl was holding a bottle of water, waiting for a black car to stop. The question is, if Malik is 2 and Sila's was 1, how many more of them are currently sitting in boardrooms across the world, waiting for the recall signal? And what happens when the natural one decides she wants her father's legacy back? Malik walked away from the flames, carrying a child that wasn't his and a heart that felt all too real for a man who officially didn't exist. He had lost a daughter made of memories, but he had found a truth that no amount of money could ever bury. If you were in Malik's shoes, knowing your entire life was just an experiment, would you keep running, or would you turn back to face the man who holds the remote? Perhaps the real question is, how many of us are truly living our own lives, and how many are just following a script we never wrote? Let us know what you think in the comments below. We want to hear your story.